everyone, and welcome to this edition of Candid Conversations. I am your host, Cynthia Maxie Milton. It's that time of year, the time of year when people think of new beginnings, new goals, especially for health, wellness, and fitness. Well, my guest today says you can control your health to a large degree by what you put in your mouth and what you put in your mind. And he has some unconventional ideas regarding that. I have to say, the ideas expressed today are not necessarily those of Candid Conversations or We Believe Digital. They're not meant to treat or to diagnose disease. We have Mr. Jay Allen, who is the founder of Herbal Genesis. He is an herbal pathologist and a health and wellness coach. Jay, welcome to Candid Conversations. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here, definitely.
So, herbal pathologist, for those of who may not know what that is, explain exactly what it is you do and how people can benefit from that.
Of course, herbal pathology. So what we look at is now the world is actually going into a realm of now going natural, right? So more people are actually looking at a natural form rather than actually having it from what we're accustomed to. So what I did was, me and the gift that's inside of me, we're talking about herbs. So the herbal form is definitely the principle of healing itself. Instructions are already given. So the pathology form of it is the study of the disease. So when it came to me, I just put them together. Herbal pathology. So we actually look at the disease. We actually address the disease through food, the herb. Food is the herb. That's the actually healing itself, right? The strength is actually inside of the leaf. The strength of the intellect is actually inside of the stem. So we have to give the body what will actually complement within itself from the herb to the body. And that's where herbal pathology comes from, how we address it. So in this case, it's not about how or what we do, or pretty much how we do it, but it's what we do. You know, the saying of, it's not what you know, it's who you know, or pretty much it's not what you do, it's how you do it. So in this sense, it's not how you do it, but it's what we put inside of our bodies.
So, we see that this particular area of nutrition, health, and wellness is growing.
Of course,
A study showed that the number of vegetarian restaurants have significantly increased
of
over
course.
the last 10 years. You are vegan. Why do you think it's important to eat a meatless diet?
Meatless, not necessarily vegan itself. So I'm looking at more of an alkalinity factor. And in this case, alkalinity not actually being a diet. The alkalinity factor is also just feeding the cells, not from a dietary point of food, but actually feeding the cells from the principle of the mineral that becomes one with it. So when we're talking about feeding the body the principle, we're actually talking about the principle that's actually within the iron itself, the principle that's actually in calcium itself, because this is what actually keeps our bodies functioning rather than a malfunctioning state in a form of going backwards. We want to actually move forward. We do know that positive energy spins to the right, not to the left, right? So in this form, we actually go to alkalinity, providing the body with oxygen, right? So when we actually intake food, the food actually gives us life. So, we get to the point of where we ingest foods, and if it's a form of glucose, glucose actually pulls oxygen out of the blood. And this is what we actually would call the itis form. When we actually eating certain foods, we will actually get tired, we will get sleepy, we will get fatigued after we eat certain foods.
Carb coma.
There we go. There we go. So in this sense, we're talking about alkalinity, and everything is actually for a healing aspect. Remember the instruction. The herb is for the healing of the nation itself. So we have to go and feed the body the principle. We have to-
So, alkalinity. So, for those who may not know, describe what some of the things are in an alkaline diet as opposed to some things that are in a more acidic diet,
of course.
or that are more alkaline as opposed to those that are more acidic, and the benefit or detriment of those.
Of course, the benefit from the alkalinity itself. So you want actually oxygen. So we can actually get oxygen directly from hemp seeds, right? We can actually make a hemp milk. We can actually go to dates. Dates. That's your number one form of a natural sugar, dates, because it won't increase the blood glucose levels. Also, too, giving the pancreas the opportunity, not its opportunity, but its instructions for process. Its instructions for progression, right? So remember, we don't want to malfunction, we want to move forward. Also, too, dates have carbon in it, right? So we have carbon within our bodies themselves. The pineal gland is definitely carbon. So we want to feed the pineal gland or feed the system what actually is within that food itself, right? So an acidic form, of course, it can actually be a milk. It can actually be rice. Of course, it's the meat. So break these things down. There's uric acid in the meat, carbonic acid that's actually in the rice, lactic acid that's actually in the milk. So if you actually take these forms away from what we've known or pretty much what we've been ingesting, now we're bringing in a source of that hemp milk. Now we're bringing in a great source of that mushroom, right? That mushroom, that's highly electricity. That's high level of electricity. That won't actually come and form in any gouty arthritis. That won't actually form uric acid buildup within the blood itself too. And when we're talking about carbonic acid is talking about rice. In any form except the wild rice. Except the wild rice. Someone would say that wild rice would actually be starch resistant. So this is what we're going to when we're talking about alkalinity. The benefits on a medicinal form, and also to the principles and law that actually comes along with these foods that won't accumulate any waste, cellular waste within the body itself.
So you take on people come to you to coach them to their wellness. So someone comes to you and they say, "Hey Jay, I have high blood pressure. I've got stiffness in my joints." And you say to them, what do you tell them?
Well, basically, we got to look at high levels of stiffness in the joints, and then a high level of blood pressure, deregulation in blood glucose levels. Everything pretty much goes together when we're talking about a dis-ease state. So first thing first, I know the body is actually out of order. So the way that we actually bring the body back to order, we have to go to the brain, right? And going to the brain itself, we have to look at what we're actually putting inside of our bodies. That's when they come to me. If anybody comes to me, what it is that we're putting inside of our bodies themselves. What do you actually want to get out of moving forward and actually converting the mind? Because that's where health begins at, in the mind. Health begins in the mind. Physical wealth begins inside the body itself. So I break these things down into 3 P's, right? And the first foremost is purpose. And then the next form is patience. And then the next P, or last P, is potential. Purpose, patience, and potential. All 3 of these forms in the Trinity work together with your Trinity that's inside of your system, going to the soul itself, your mind, your will, and your emotions. That's what we're working against. And so when you put it in that aspect alone itself too, it makes you think just a little bit more. Okay, I know the purpose, or my purpose. If you don't know your purpose, then we actually find your purpose. And so now we're actually giving you life outside of the life that you've known. So it's giving you that opportunity to, excuse me, to put yourself in a place. Once you put yourself in a place outside of what you already known to be normal, I'm pretty much rallying up the factors of you being in an abnormal place, but it's going to benefit you, because kind of like getting you out your comfort zone. And once I get you out of your comfort zone, I make you think just a little bit more. Remember, we're going back to purpose, patience, and potential. Purpose being the start, patience actually being the dash, that's the process, because you have to have patience when you're going through the process. And also, too, the potential to move forward, because potential is ongoing within the system. Same thing that works inside of your body. And that's what you would actually receive from me. And then from there, we just actually go forward with what it is that we need to work on to actually get you to the ending goal of ongoing potential, and not to get you to a point to stop. And also, too, how to maintain your order within your body itself.
How do you maintain order within the body?
Again, you have to go to the mind itself, and we have to control. It's all about self-control, going into the will, and that's right there in the mind. Remember, 3 elements in the mind itself are pretty much 3 elements in the soul, and that's your mind, your will, and your emotions. Your willpower basically is going to get you to that point of I have the will to do, or I have the will not to do. So not to place the desire over the danger itself. So what it is that we indulge in, we're actually placing the desire over the danger. Knowing that my blood glucose levels are 244, but at the same time, when you begin to neglect it, right, the body becomes even more greater in a disorderly factor or disorderly fashion. And then that pancreas begins to malfunction. So it's actually going backwards, right? And so we don't want to get ourselves to that point to where it's going backwards and that body breaks down, that immune system breaks down. The system is totally dehydrated. Once it becomes dehydrated to that point to where now the immune system cannot fight off or build up that tolerance to fight off any type of infection, any type of disease, and then we break down. And
Is that what we describe as diabetes?
of course, diabetes mellitus. So not only are we addressing the pancreas, but we're also addressing the glandular highway. We're talking about the pineal gland going back to the brain. We talk about the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. All of these forms, they play a major role in controlling our blood glucose levels. The blood is the most important aspect of the body. Without the blood, there can be no life. So with blood, there is life.
Let's talk about cancer.
Okay.
I've heard it said on more than one occasion, cancer feeds off sugar.
hmm
What are your thoughts about that, and what are your thoughts about what causes cancer in the body?
Cancer, we talking about stress. We talking about sugar. Sugar, we going into sweet acidity. Whatever that comes into the body itself that's actually good, the body will actually become attached to it, even if it's in the form of a great manipulation, right? So stress, and we're looking at excess cells. We're looking at excess cells. These cells will actually come together in a form to where the body's actually malfunctioning. When the body's actually malfunctioning, there's a process what we call bad neoplasms, and this is actually an occurrence of bad cells clustering together. So when you have so many different cells actually clustering together at a rapid rate, now the body's actually in a disorderly fashion because, of course, the body produces cells. But at the same time, when we have bad production of bad cells, this is where the comes in. And also, too, when we're talking about specific products, which is a real good product that I actually have, that actually cleanses the lymphatic system, which actually absorbs cancerous cells, keeping the lymphatic system clean by actually bringing in potassium chloride, by actually bringing in forms of iron, by actually having our white blood cell count and our immune system up to par. So once these cancerous cells actually take place, these tumors, we want to actually decrease the form of a tumor at that rate itself.
So you talked about the lymphatic system.
hmm
Explain for those who don't know what is our lymphatic system and what is the importance of having it work optimally and how we do that.
Working optimally, that in fact, the lymphatic system is basically a drainage highway within the system itself. Again, we're actually looking at absorbing the cancerous cells with that lymphatic system. It's just a drainage highway. Without that lymphatic system, excess waste from the blood cannot actually be dismayed or pretty much expelled from the body itself. So we have to keep that lymphatic system cleansed. And plain and simple, that lymphatic system, it absorbs cancerous cells. So important because now we're looking at diseases, right? First and foremost, we're looking at the tonsils, right? That's all a part of your lymphatic system. When these lymph nodes begins to swell, that's the symptom and a sign that the lymphatic system is saturated and accumulated with cellular waste.
So what's the answer to clean? I know, did you answer that? And what's the answer to
To
cleaning it?
cleaning it, we're
Yeah.
actually going to potassium chloride. Potassium chloride is a positive form of a carbonate that actually comes into the system and it'll actually cleanse the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system actually is in line with the immune system, of course, right? So it actually keeps the mucus levels actually within place. If there's a swelling again in the lymph nodes alone itself too, this is a form of an infection, right? Because when the lymphs actually swell, we actually do know that there's a form of infection in the body. So it lets me know that there's a lack of copper in the body. That mineral that actually helps fight off of infection. So you want to go to the lymphatic system with potassium chloride. You'll want to go to the lymphatic system with the proper herb that actually contains that form of copper that actually fight off or pretty much regulate that immune system. Not only the immune system, but the lymphatic system to help drain it out.
Um, a lot of people complain of not having enough energy.
Okay.
So when a client comes to you and they says, "I'm just tired. I don't have a lot of energy," what are your recommendations, or how do you work with them?
First of all, we look at the foods that you're ingesting, right? And we're looking at what it is that you're ingesting. The foods that you're ingesting, of course, they actually cause the lack of energy because we do know that number one, if it's a form of gluten, gluten is pretty much pulling oxygen out of the body because it converts into sulfites, right? And when it converts into sulfites, of course, that's where you get the minor headaches from after you consume your foods. Then, of course, too, the lack of oxygen can actually come from just a lack of sleep, but just let's take it a little bit deeper because there's a lack of iron in the system. When there's a lack of iron in the body, there's a lack of electricity, this blood, right? The blood actually feeds off of iron. So if the blood is not feeding or actually hadn't eaten any iron for that day or pretty much for that month or pretty much for that year, fatigue sets in. And when fatigue sets in the body itself, now the body's at a high level of a disorderly faction.
Now, you talked to me earlier, and one thing you say, all irons are not created equal.
Of course.
So, talk about the different kinds of iron and what iron is best for your body and why.
It depends on what we're dealing with. So we're actually dealing with the level of blood glucose elevation. I would actually go to burdock root. Burdock root actually contains, or it's pretty much a company, the company of iron in the burdock root is actually inulin. So it's real good for your blood glucose regulation. If it's a form of I have an iron deficiency, but at the same time I have rickets, I have osteoporosis, then I can actually go to a form of herb that actually contains phosphorus, like a blue vervain. High level of iron, but at the same time too, it contains phosphorus. So it's going to work together. So I can actually you can say I'm iron deficient, and I can actually give you 3 different forms of iron. But if it's actually not accompanied with what's going on inside of your body, that can actually be no benefit to that. And also too, that iron has to be in a phosphate form.
Can you take more than one form of iron at the same time?
I would say taking more than one form, it's only one form, and it's in a phosphate. More than one form, and it's in a phosphate. That's the only form.
Or more than one kind? You talked about different kinds
Right.
to deal with different kinds of issues in the body.
Exactly.
Can you take more than one kind at a time?
I would actually go to what it is that we're dealing with. If I know for sure we have to rectify the blood glucose levels, then I would actually stick with that. That's just accompanied by that inulin, rather than giving you something that that pretty much would be not necessarily irrelevant. You'll receive the iron itself, but at the same time, we want to rectify what's going on in the pancreas. So I would give you something that's more poetic with what's going on with your system, rather than actually just giving you something that's actually off the market that won't benefit you at all. Remember, we're talking about iron in the sense of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So I have to give your body life itself. Once I give your body life, there goes the power that actually comes with the life. So when power actually comes with the life itself, now we're rectifying the pancreas, and also too, we're keeping those iron levels, that hemoglobin, to a certain point. And when we keep it to a certain point, there goes your energy. Fatigue levels are gone.
Okay. Well, we've been talking with Jay Allen Sr. He is the owner and founder of Herbal Genesis. He is a wellness coach. And if you would like to know more about Jay Allen and what he's doing, you can contact him on Facebook or Instagram. You want to get your information on how people can get a hold of you?
Of course, you can contact me on Facebook, Jay Allen Sr. Also, too, you can actually contact me on Facebook at Herbal, Herbal, Genesis. Genesis is actually spelled Genesis, Genesis, and ISIS actually represents minute or mineral. So it's really herbal mineral. But Herbal Genesis itself. Herbal Genesis Consulting and Products, LLC on Facebook. And also, too, Instagram. Instagram is J Allen Sr. _ and there you can find all of the links to actually go to my consulting pages, and also to my my website for product purchase.
So you've been listening to Candid Conversations. My guest today, Jay Allen Sr. We're going to continue this conversation, so make sure you come back for part 2. Thank you for joining us for this edition. Have a great day, everyone.